I said it offline and I'm going to say it online now. This is the most selfish show that I've done. This show is more important than many of you will understand, but I'm here with a very special guest today. This is somebody that I've known, we were saying, probably close to a decade. And we met in the Synthwave scene where I met a lot of great people that I've met over the years. But I have the one and only GenuineHuman, also known as Jason or Jay. And I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hang out.
Oh,
So
thank you, Benny. I mean, it's great to catch up. As you say, we've known each other for so long. To be able to have a conversation like this it's great. It's really good.
same here. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, for those that don't know, we talked a lot offline over the years, and life happened, COVID happened, and then just life changed for everybody as a whole. So we unintentionally disconnected. We kind of just moved on with just life. And I was thinking about him about maybe a year ago, and I said, I got to see. I noticed that obviously you weren't having active stuff on Twitter X. I wasn't as much either, but then I came across obviously your other channels, and we were able to reconnect. And today I want to take a moment to really talk about not only GenuineHuman, where a lot of people know you as far as your pixel art and all your animation work that you do, but who Jay is and pretty much a lot of the work that you've been doing for 25 years.
Yeah.
So, I don't think enough people know about that. So I'd love to give you that chance to share with people some of the stuff that you've done, maybe before you created the GenuineHuman moniker, what you're maybe working on now, and, do we think we may get a point in life where you might come back to that kind of style? I know we've always talked about like that's a big passion for you, but
Yeah.
sometimes life gets in the way. So
That's it. Real life happens.
but yeah, like please, if you don't mind, for those that are not familiar, if you can let them know who you are and what we
Sure.
know you for.
Well, I mean, yeah, as you say, I guess a lot of people know me as GenuineHuman art for my pixel art, which really started. I mean, it was Twitter. It was Twitter. We were all on Twitter back in those days. It was, I think it was around 2009 or 2010. I started making pixel art and really basic stuff. Really, they were like stupid little single panel cartoons, and they were kind of like they were kind of based around stupid things people do, which is why I called them genuine humans at the time. It's like these were genuine humans. And
Okay,
so I had like a Twitter account with that name, and it kind of stuck. It wasn't necessary, it wasn't ever designed to be a name that I would take on, but
understood.
that's kind of what happened. And then I was doing just more in that. I got a little bit more adventurous. And then it was around 2014, I think, that I had been posting up a bunch of like cyberpunk gifs. I'd started really, you know, exploring that. That was just stuff I loved. It was, I had this thing that it wasn't futuristic. It was kind of the present that I had imagined as a kid, if that makes sense. It was the 2014 that I had imagined as a kid.
Right.
A- And it was around that time that the synthwave scene was really taking off, and several people in the synthwave scene saw my work. I loved their music. In particular, the first people to reach out, we I don't know who reached out to who, but I ended up talking with Dan from Gunship, and it was just one of those moments of, dude, I love your work, dude, I love your work. We should do something together, and we did, and so I think it was 2015 then that I made the Gunship Revel in Your Time video, which did really well, and people loved, and like I won, an award, and it went down really well, and I think that video pretty much tied me to the synthwave scene at that point. And I ended up making another video for them and a bunch of promo material over the years, and I did stuff with like the likes of Wave Shaper, Dream Fiend, a whole bunch more. I ended up doing a lot of stuff with the Midnight, which I still do T-shirt designs for them. They're the only people I still like. Anytime they get in touch, it's
That's
like,
awesome.
dude, we're doing a new tour. We need a new shirt design. Can you do it? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can do
That's
that.
amazing.
So I mean, I've really cut short what was a very long journey in there. But that in terms of my pixel pixel art really is how that happened. And and we obviously got to know each other through that scene, Neon Arcadia, and that's how we found each other over the years. So yeah, I was very much embedded in that synthwave scene, and really great people. Like, I mean, it was this kind of bright light for several years at least. Really great music, a lot of creativity, um, and I made good friends out of it. I mean, I Signal Noise, James White, and I, like, we talk every day.
That's
It's like, we so it's a lot of good came from that scene.
right.
But as you say, then life happened, and I think it's funny. Twitter was even a factor there. Twitter changed. Some of us drifted away from Twitter.
Yeah,
The pandemic happened. It's funny. I have a big memory of the pandemic because it was just kicking off, and the premiere of the movie Rise of the Synths, the documentary,
yeah, yeah.
was in Dublin, and right when the pandemic was kicking off, and I had been invited to be part of like a panel discussion at the premiere, the
I
Irish
remember
premiere of that
that.
movie.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it was that day of like, oh, is anyone going to be there? Should I be there? Like, is it wrong that I'm going? And I
Right.
went, and sure enough, not many people went, but like the city was a ghost town. Um, and I think it was that day or the day after that total lockdown happened.
Yeah. No,
And
in March.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
such a weird vibe. But so it's funny, like that Rise of the Synths, which really, you know, was a great celebration of synthwave, and that whole moment
Right.
um, almost brought me into the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, everything had really changed. Uh, it had I had changed. It was a different place. The synthwave scene was different. A lot changed over those few years. So yeah, it was funny that that was kind of marked by that documentary, which in itself was almost like a little bow on that
Yeah.
moment in time. You know what I mean? It kind of
Yeah.
um, there's something kind of nice about it and something kind of sad about it all in one.
Agreed. Because it's almost like the beginning and the end simultaneously, if you think about
That's
it.
it.
Because I
That's
mean,
it.
the scene is not gone. Synthwave is never going to go
No.
away. But as far as what we're familiar with, the community that we dealt with, we saw some of that, kind of dwindle and kind of go their own ways. There were a lot more artists that were active.
Yeah,
Most of them are not doing music anymore for the most part,
that's true.
and it's awesome to see the ones that are still doing it. And the biggest thing I take away from that scene is seeing the continued success of people that never gave up. You know,
Totally, totally. And you know what, Benny, everything changes, and that's not a bad thing. I
right?
mean, it's evolution and it's life. That's what happens, and that is not a bad thing. And there's great things in synthwave, even right now.
Agreed.
Um, but yeah, it was a moment in time, I think, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I think it was also just it was a great community. Like
Mhm.
that's the big picture that I took out of it because I've known people in different places. It wasn't till Neon Arcadia and that scene that I made friends like
Yeah.
you over all over the world. I got very close with Zenon. I got very close with Alpha Chrome Yayo, Megan
Ah, yeah, of
McDuffie.
course.
These are
Yeah.
people that I hold near dear to my heart.
Great
And
people. Great people.
right, and seeing what they're doing, they all three of them are video game composers, and that's
Yes.
an extraordinary feat, in the rise of, a moment of like unsureness, like, hey, can we still do this? And when there's a will, there's a way, and I think we're all evolving in our own ways. So
That's it.
again, it goes back to you, like you said that everything changed for you. So obviously you had a career in the arts prior to this moniker.
That's
Um,
right. I mean, the pixel art was a hobby, I mean, that was a
right.
thing I did to wind down and relax. My day job, my career has been in animation, and up to that point, largely for very young kids. I made a lot of preschool shows. One of my first big shows, which people in the UK will know, not necessarily anyone outside the UK, was Rhubarb and Custard 2, which was a follow up to like a classic TV show from 1974. So I directed the kind of the next season of that, and
Okay.
yeah, made a lot of kid shows. Created a show called Fluffy Gardens, and that did really well. That went to like, God, something like 100 countries, and
That's
so
amazing.
I'm kind of known in animation for that stuff. I'm kind of
Right.
known in my industry for all of my work for kids.
Right.
So when I started pixel art, yeah, it was very much a way to wind down. It
Okay.
was a hobby. It was kind of, because pixel art's kind of like knitting for me, because it's like a
Yes. It's
square
time
at a
consuming
time.
too.
It's
Yes.
time consuming, and you just get lost in the details. And it's funny, for the first even, God, I'm going to say 5 years of making pixel art, at least. Um, I didn't approach it like normal artwork, in the sense that if I was drawing something, if it was a drawing, I would rough out a few thumbnail sketches and plot it out and get a sense of what I wanted and the composition and everything, and kind of refine it from there. Most of my pixel art, certainly in the early years, I just basically started in one corner and had no idea what the rest was going to be, and I would just start drawing and fill in. So one tiny corner would be finished, and there would be literally nothing else planned out. I had no clue. I was just basically filling bits out as I went along, and I found that really relaxing, and it was very creative. There was no restrictions, and there was no point. I think, because another thing with kind of doing that thing of roughing an image out is, like, it's great for planning, but there comes a point where you kind of know what the final image is going to be, but you still got to do the work to get there.
Right. For
Whereas
sure.
when you're just starting in one corner and moving out, you there's
So
creativity all the way to the
a
end.
blank. Yeah.
You don't know where it's going to go. So a lot of my stuff, and even the early stuff for Gunship, was kind of like that.
Right.
um I would just create backgrounds and characters, and not necessarily know where they're going, what they're doing. you know.
Right. Well, you know what? The work speaks for itself. Obviously, as we're doing the show, I'll have some stuff edited in so people could see some of that work. And really, I think that it's remarkable that you did that type of stuff, knowing that you have other ambitions, that are in the same creative space. If you think about that, because not only have you done the pixel art, you've done animation along with it. So like you
Yes.
really you married the two in such a remarkable way, especially
Yeah.
with the videos you've done. And I know that you've done work later, more probably in your work profession, for a mutual friend, Adi Shankar.
Yes, that's
Who's
right.
he posted about you not too long ago on Twitter, and he said how much he loved you, and he showed some of that footage, and it's just awesome to kind of see that people appreciate your work from all different parts of the world
Oh
with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
Addy's great. So he got in contact a couple of times. I think the first time or so he got in contact, I didn't have the time to work on whatever it was, but then ended up doing some scenes for his show, the Netflix show Guardians of Justice. That was a
yes,
lot of fun. That was a huge amount of fun, and very open. He didn't really give a lot of notes, if any. It was just like, dude, I want what you do. And that was great. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good guy.
I mean you could see it, and you did a great job as you always do. So
Thank you.
yeah, he's got an awesome creative brain too, and
Oh yeah,
he's somebody also that, like, we used to talk a little bit on the Facebook side many
sure.
years ago, and then the algorithms change and all that stuff, but we reconnected, and we chat here and there. I know he's pushing his Devil May Cry show that's coming soon,
That's
but
right. It looks
that's
amazing.
it does. And
Yeah,
he likes to be like that internet troll now, so he loves to play both sides, and I love seeing it. But
yeah.
again, I just love that he took that moment to reflect, obviously some of his previous work, but to give you that acknowledgement. So it was
Oh yeah,
well deserved.
very kind of him. Yeah, very kind of him. But that's the thing. I mean, he loves the art and the artists that he works with. He does. He's one of those people. He comes from a genuine place of passion. He really does. He does it because he loves it.
Right.
Anything he makes, he's doing it because he loves it. You
Agreed.
know. Yeah.
Well, I would say that I could say the same for you. Like you
Thank you.
said, I know you said that it was a little bit therapeutic and stuff, but realistically, I
Yeah.
think when we're in those states, we put out our best work,
Oh yeah.
because we're not confined to doing something for someone else. You're getting to put out your vision and your heart.
That's
So
it. That's it. Yeah.
awesome. So I know from looking at obviously your extended resume, because again,
Mhm.
there's so much that you've done. We could talk a little more recent. You were part of the Star Wars Vision show, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So now, since God, during the pandemic, I joined a studio here in Ireland called Cartoon Saloon as a producer. So Cartoon Saloon is known to some people, very well respected studio, Oscar nominated studio for films like Song of the Sea and Wolfwalkers and The Breadwinner and more. So people within animation certainly should be familiar with Cartoon Saloon, incredibly well respected studios. So yeah, I'm a producer there, and we got a call about whether we wanted to be part of Star Wars Visions, and so I immediately was like, oh, well, of course, of course, I'll produce that. That's my thing now.
Right.
And so Paul Young, who's one of the studio owners, um, we had been we had been kind of talking about doing stuff anyway because Paul was a producer all the way through the studio's history, but he's incredibly creative. Had started as a creative. He's an artist, and had always been looking to direct. And so we had already been talking about what that might be. And Paul's a big sci-fi fan, so when this came in, it was the perfect opportunity for Paul to direct and move into that. So yeah, we put a team together. So I would produce it. Paul was going to direct. We got the writer of Song of the Sea, Will Collins, on to write it. And so then what happened was we pitched a couple of stories because it was wide open. That was the thing with Visions. They wanted us to bring, what we do, and
Right.
they had no restrictions. It was like, just give us what you would love to make.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and it was great, and they were really true to their word on that. That ethos ran through the entire thing, and they really did embrace what we were doing and what we wanted to do the whole way through. They were amazing to work with, I have to say. The Lucasfilm team are amazing to work with. So we pitched a couple of ideas, but it actually happened that the story we went with was my story. I'd come up with it. So uh, Will said, "Well, you're a writer, Jay. Anyway, I mean, so why don't you write it? Like, why am I here? This is your story. You're a writer. Why don't you write it?" And which was very kind of him. I mean, we'd brought him on to write because he's an amazing writer. So then we just decided to write it together, and
That's awesome.
we wrote it together. It was an amazing experience. Will is just fantastic. He's a lovely guy, but we also really gelled well together creatively. We brought out the best in each other. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so we wrote that, and Paul directed it, and I produced it. And God, it took us about a year, I think, to make. It's only about 11 minutes, but it took us about a year to make. So the episode is Screecher's Reach. I think it's the second episode of season 2, and it went down really, really well. I think it was the highest rated episode of season 2, and it's the one that kind of gets called out in the articles, which is great. I'm always very proud of that. It's like
Absolutely.
it really resonated with people. And it's like, I've always been a huge Star Wars fan, Benny. I grew up with it. It's my thing. I adore Star Wars. So getting to play in that universe was just,
Right.
God, if I could go back and tell my childhood self that I'm going to do that, it's an amazing thing to be a part of. It was such a fantastic experience. Like, it was all positive. It was just all positive. And then to see it recognized, I mean, one of my favorite things was watching the reaction videos, which, like, most
Right.
of my work up to that point had been for young kids. So no, there's no like 4-year-old, 5-year-old kids going on YouTube and doing their reactions. So
Right.
it was funny watching people react to this video, to our episode and this story, and to see where it got them, consistently. um
Right.
it was
It's
very
remarkable.
funny. Because you've seen it. It goes dark at a
Yes.
certain point. It goes dark, and I do remember two guys in particular who spent the first couple of minutes mocking the Irish accents and laughing at the Irish accents, and then when it went dark, they shut up, and it was just like you could see their faces, just like, Didn't expect it to go this way, and they were just sucked in, and I loved that. I loved that change of tone and that reaction. It was really good. It
Yeah,
was
it
really good.
speaks to the fact that they were immersed at that point, and that speaks to your writing. So
Thank you, thank you.
amazing,
I
dude.
mean, like I said, it was like Paul was an
Team
amazing
effort,
director. Yeah, the whole team was amazing. The
right?
whole team was amazing.
No, that's great. And like you said, when you connect with somebody that is like minded like you, and you guys have the same drive, that's just a recipe for magic, in my opinion. So, I mean, I've
That's
seen
it.
it with your work, leading up to that. So, I think that a lesson that I think creatives can take is, we live in a world where I feel like there are two sides of the creative. There's the creatives that just do it out of pure passion and drive, and they're the ones that have taken that career and just they need to move forward and find a way. And it's
Yeah,
it's it's how you approach that. There could be a happy medium. Like, you can obviously have a career and still work on things and be passionate about it versus doing it like a job. You know what I mean?
oh,
You think about people that just get casted for stuff. Hey, here's my rate. Cool. You like it? Cool. And they just kind of, they go off the book, and then they're gone. That's it.
that's it. That's it,
You
and that's
get
fine. I mean, a
yeah,
job can be a job that everyone's got to eat,
right,
So I
right.
kind of, I have no judgment on those people at all, but yeah, we're in it because we love it, and
Well, yeah,
there's a
that's what I'm saying.
passion there.
I feel
Yeah,
like there's just the two sides of it, and I
yeah,
I love just seeing the drive and the passion, because I think you just get something that is not reproducible. Like,
yeah,
especially in the world of AI, like, we won't have that discussion.
yeah.
There's a conversation for another day, but
Yes.
yeah, no, but that's really awesome. And you get nominated? I believe. Like, I feel like there was just a lot of talk
Yeah, we
for it.
got
So
God, did we win an Emmy for production design? I think, and we definitely won an Annie. Paul won the Annie Award for best director. I think we may have picked up a couple more, maybe, or definitely nominated for others.
right, no, it's
It's funny. I'm
incredible.
not. I'm not an awards person. I never keep track really of awards, but yeah, it did well. It did well.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, for me, it was mostly about the experience, and like we got to go to Skywalker Ranch, Benny, which was just
Oh my
insane.
god,
We did the
jealous.
sound over there. We did the sound there. It was just that was incredible. It was amazing. We were staying like in a little house on the ranch, and along with people who were, I think, finishing Mandalorian season 3, and
Wow.
Dave Filoni was there making the first season of Ahsoka. That was fun. That was fun. He brought us into a room to say hello,
Oh,
and
wow.
showed us some stuff he was working on, and even his producer at the time, I could see his producer was just there, like basically like, oh God, don't show them. You're not allowed to show them. And then we realized he had his laptop open, and there were a whole
And
bunch
you
of
had
people.
stuff like, yeah.
He had been on a call, so there were all these people and these messages going, who are these guys? So he had just left
Wow.
it going on.
Well, that's
Um,
awesome that he took that time. That's really cool.
Oh, he lovely guy, incredible guy. I have to say, really an amazing guy. But that was just it was a fantastic experience. We got chased by wild turkeys on the ranch, and so
Boy.
that's yeah that's a bucket list thing.
Really, really
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. So, from Star Wars, right? We know you love Star Wars. That's something that you were passionate about. So you got that in that achievement side. As I'm looking at your background, I see a
Mhm.
variety of things, as you see with mine. We talked a little offline. Is there a genre or a property that you'd like to explore that maybe you haven't yet in the world of what you do?
Um, the one I always wanted, and like had so many different ideas for over the years, was Knight Rider. I
Okay.
would kill to make several versions of Knight Rider. I do remember having like a because a lot of my work is for young kids. I do remember how I had like this concept worked up for Knight Rider Junior, like a kid
Oh,
show
that's awesome.
based on Knight Rider, and I still would love to make that show.
Little
I think
kit, little
that's
kit.
it. Little kid and a little kid character with David Hasselhoff as the kind of older advisor, parental figure,
Oh
and I just
man.
wanted that show. I could see that show. I just would love to make that show. I still all these years later, Knight Rider has stayed with me. It's in my heart, and easily the best TV or movie car ever made. Kit is just brilliant. So yeah, Knight Rider's very close to my heart. Masters of the Universe, obviously, that's got so much potential. I know there's a film in production at the moment. Who knows how that'll be? I'm looking forward to it. I'm open to
I
whatever.
listen. I love me some Dolph Lundgren. So
Totally. Totally. So yeah, Masters of the Universe is just, that was always so good. I think there was they just went for it with that. There was so much color and everything was bigger and kind of more outlandish with it,
right.
and fun. It was fun. And if you remember what it was like back in those days, I mean, toy stores were full. They were packed, full of all kinds of cool stuff. So to stand out at all was tough. And yet there were these big, chunky, muscly, colorful figures with like crazy faces, and each one having a crazy gimmick, and they just looked fun. It was so much fun. So yeah, I've a big soft spot for Masters of the Universe as well. Definitely that would be a universe that would be fun to play in, for sure.
I'm gonna throw something out into the ether because
Mhm.
sometimes when you will it, it finds a way. I can see you and Addy connecting and doing maybe a bootleg universe style Knight Rider.
Oh man, that would be incredible. Do you know what? I wonder if he's a Knight Rider fan. Ah,
I might have to hit him up and might have to
yeah,
keep you in the loop. Maybe we can see what we can do. But
absolute. God, he would do a great Knight Rider.
he'd kill it. And I'm not to steal your thought, but like I feel like a large chunk of your story could fit into that style. Like
Yeah,
maybe having a kid and having like come on, he if he could do it, he'd get Hasselhoff aboard. I mean, he did
totally.
Kung Fury, which moment of silence. Like it. Are we ever going to get two? I just have to throw it out there.
I don't know what
I
what
dream. I
happened.
dream about.
I feel
There
like
was
I
a
haven't seen an update in years.
no. It's been years. So David was. I think the movie's done. So I think
Right.
they were in a post production portion, but there was the investors decided not to give the money in, and pretty
Okay.
much everything stopped. So
Right.
I mean, think about the budget they had. They had Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Mhm.
David Fassbender. So, I mean, they went quiet.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sucks. I mean, I emailed David and like many people that I reach out to, just like you're either going to get nothing or a no.
Yeah.
So that's my approach. And
Sure.
just to see if he was all right, like I care as a fan, and that movie changed the landscape for synthwave for a while too.
It did. It
So
did.
um, I don't mean to get sidetracked. That was
No, no, no.
I'm very emotional about that.
Yeah.
Like I have such a very soft spot in my heart for that project,
Oh, same. Same.
and I'm a big sucker for Turbo Kid, which is like that's my spiritual successor to that. So
Totally. And you know what? Turbo Kid is still one of my go-to soundtracks. That soundtrack is incredible.
I have to tell you, I'm a diehard Lamados fan, and they just put out the soundtrack today for the video game because they did the video game score.
Ah,
So if you
wow.
want
Okay.
more reason to
I will
listen to the music, let's go.
I will go for that. Yeah, because that's quite a while, that soundtrack. I remember them talking about releasing it, and then I went looking for it and it wasn't out.
Yeah, so I
Um,
think it had to do with the rights to
okay.
the licensing of the game
Right.
because it's residing on a different label than their own. So,
Right. Okay.
but
Okay. Oh, that's
what
cool.
happened was I was just in the mood on Apple Music looking. I'm like, I'm in a summer of '84 mood, so I was listening to them there, and then
Yeah.
I saw a little picture. It looked like it was the Turbo Kid colors. We know
Right.
the colors if you're a fan.
Yeah.
And then I listened and I'm like, wait a minute. And it said this year. So I went on Twitter and I said, hey, what are you guys teasing here? And they
Mhm.
didn't reply, but then eventually they're like, yeah, we're teasing the album. And I'm like, let's go.
Right. Oh,
So
that's
that
cool.
made me
That's pretty cool.
listen, that's me. Like if I could make anything creatively that's not mine, it would be to find a way to make a Turbo Kid too. Like
Yeah. I mean, there had been talk of a sequel back in the day. I don't know what
I
happened to it because I would have thought, like, I don't, do you know what? I don't know the figures, but because it was a low budget movie,
Right.
and it did well. I would have thought, like,
Right.
financially, it probably made sense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of logistics in the background. I'm thinking because the directors is a trio,
Mhm.
so it's a lot of different people involved. I think some of them are kind of doing their own thing. You know, they
Right.
did Summer of '84. They did a zombie film not too long ago. But it looks like they're not maybe doing stuff together right now. That's just my
Okay.
thought.
Right.
I got to meet Michael Ironside about a year
Ah,
and a half ago, and
very cool.
I fanboyed over him. And we had a really long talk at a convention, and he's like they have a script. And he said
Mhm.
he was involved, and like I can't. He said don't share what we talked about, but like he has the hope, and he would love to come back in a maybe a different form of some sorts because obviously
Sure.
we know his character met his demise. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
this is another segue, but like this is the
No, but
stuff this is what we're into it. So
this
that's
is what
I
we're
love
into,
it.
and I would love to see a sequel to that movie. That movie was so much fun. It was just pure fun. I love,
Yeah,
and that was one thing that was nice about the synthwave scene. Probably still is, but um, and I think it comes from 80s culture. I think there's a thing about 80s culture which is that even when it's outlandish, even when you get something like Commando, which is hilarious and
the
ridiculous,
best.
it's sincere. There's a
Yeah,
sincerity there. It's not laughing at itself. Yes, you can laugh at it if you want,
right.
but it's not laughing at itself. They're not like winking at the camera going, "Look how stupid this is." They're they're
They
they're
went in
coming at
because
it
they
with their
cared.
heart, they're trying to entertain you in a very sincere way. And
Right.
Turbo Kid was huge, it was silly, it was gory, it was everything was cartoony and outlandish, but it had a sincere heart, it came with sincerity. And I really appreciate that. I actually love that. I love that open heart.
Same. And it was a movie that it's funny that I wasn't introduced to it from the scene.
Mhm.
It happened to pop up on Netflix, and I'm like, that just looks awesome.
Yeah,
I said it could be awful, and I'm still gonna watch it. And then I watched it, and like for me, the biggest experiences I get are watching something blind, which is so hard to
totally.
do.
Yeah,
Like
that's it.
It Follows is another movie that I fell in love with because I went blind.
Yeah,
And it's an amazing experience, and we need more of that. I think we need more of that type of art that takes a chance because we live in this
yeah,
world where everything is repeating IPs, borrowing inspirations, and not taking a chance.
that's it. Yeah,
And Kung Fury was one of those examples of like, David did that like practically by himself with such a small team, and the Kickstarter did well, but it's
yeah,
just the level of heart that went in.
that's
Like
it.
I'm like, how did this guy do this? Because he cared and he just wanted to do it
Yeah,
his way. He didn't care that we had Triceracop. Like,
yeah,
exactly. That's what it's about.
that's it.
We definitely need more of that. And I look forward to more creators doing that type of stuff, taking that chance because the
Yeah,
fans are there. The fans
yeah,
want it. They want to go, what the hell is this? Oh my God. Like they don't want to, oh, it's just another rip off of this, or this is, oh, they're trying to do this. It's easy to be inspired, but
yeah.
obviously, it comes to a point where you know that you can do better.
Oh,
So,
totally. And it is, and even that it's. I think a lot of that is what you do with the inspiration.
yes,
And because that was one
absolutely.
thing I actually think was really important in the synthwave scene, in the music, in the visuals. Obviously, there were a lot of '80s influences there, but very little of what happened in the synthwave scene could you go back to the '80s and find. Do you know what I
Right,
mean? It didn't exist in the '80s. It wasn't just repeating '80s stuff.
right,
It was almost like it was tapping into something from that mindset and from that era and
right.
creating something new with it.
Absolutely.
And that's what I loved. So yes, there are very obvious influences, for sure. Uh,
Right,
but they did something fresh with it. And there's still people doing something fresh with it. And I love that. I think that's the best of all worlds.
right. You seen Psycho Gorman? Because I say that's a perfect example. I think
I have not seen Psycho Gorman.
take a watch to that one. That's another one that just you can tell there's so much '80s lifeblood
Okay.
in it, but
Right.
it's not
Okay.
something that's been done.
Right.
It's a horror comedy,
Hmm.
It deals with this alien that is like supposed to be the destroyer of worlds, and
Nice.
he's basically trapped on Earth. And this
Okay.
young girl finds him and finds that there's a component that controls his essence. So
Right.
basically becomes the boss of him. And
Okay.
she's a young girl, but she's a jerk. She hates
Right.
people, she curses people out. But there's points where it feels like a 90s, uh even 80s Sentai Power Rangers kind of. There's
Right.
people in the full blown costumes having fights in the forest, and it's just
Oh,
like it's
wonderful.
outlandish with tons
Yes.
of practical effects. It's goofy, it's campy, but you can tell that that's an example of like we didn't have it like that back then,
Sure.
but somebody took that and said, "Let me make my own twist on it."
Yeah.
So you can't say, "Oh, that looks like that movie." It which is what we're saying, which is
That's
amazing.
it. It's creating something new from it. Okay, I got to check that one out. That sounds cool.
Yeah,
That
you
sounds
definitely
cool.
let me know.
Oh
But
yeah, I will.
awesome.
Yeah.
So, in your free time,
Mm.
obviously you haven't had time to do the pixel art and things like that. What do you do for fun nowadays? Do you
Oh
play
man,
games?
I'm still playing video games. Yeah, it's funny. I haven't created a lot of pixel art in the last, God, even the last 2 years. I burnt out a couple of years ago for sure. Um,
I think
and
we
I
had to
found it,
talk about that a little bit offline.
yeah, we did. And I found it very hard to get inspired. And like every month or so, I would go, okay, now's the time. Now's the time to get back into it. And I would start something and find myself unable to finish it. And it's been really tricky. I'm not quite sure what the block is. And yet, like I said, when the midnight call up and want a t-shirt design, I can knuckle down and do that. But it's a t-shirt design like is a single still
Right,
artwork, as opposed to like an animated piece or whatever.
right,
Um, uh, and also there's a lot of there's a lot of fun that comes with doing those t-shirt designs. But yeah, it's been tricky. So yeah, and I do think part of it is that I have been so creative at work, that
right.
sometimes that makes it harder. Almost the more creative you are at work, the less energy you have for that in your spare time.
That
So I
makes
think that's
sense.
that's definitely been a factor. And I went through a lot of life changes as well, Benny. Even in the midst of the pandemic. We talked about some of that. So life has been very up and down for me. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, and I think that definitely changed things. But yeah, I still enjoy playing video games. I recently played through that Alien VR game. It's like, oh, what is it?
Okay.
Rogue Incursion or something, I think it's called. Quite
Yeah.
enjoyed that. I do love VR, I have to say. I quite enjoyed that. I still haven't finished Cyberpunk 2077 or whatever
Same
year it is,
same
but
here.
I feel like I've been playing it for so long and it just keeps going. Like it's so good, but it just keeps going.
Yep. I can't remember the last time I picked it up because I'm like, all right, I think I need to invest time. And
Yeah.
I do a lot of short form games nowadays, with the exception of Fortnite, which has rotted my
Mhm.
brain since the pandemic.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, I feel like you're in that same mindset of like you're doing a lot of creative stuff as a full-time, uh, mindset. You
Hmm.
want to disconnect sometimes, and I know that's hard to
Yes.
say because when you think about a creative that is working their way up, the first thing that they say is, I want to have a job where I love what I'm doing. But then
Yes.
when you love what you're doing, do you still do it when you're not doing it? Like
That's
that's
it.
that's that's a
And
conversation that's not talked about.
for sure. And even from a health point of view, Benny, I do think people at some point need to switch off.
Yeah,
I think if you're trying to be creative all the time, or even if I think worse, if you're framing it in a way of I need to be productive all the time,
yeah,
I think that can wear you down. And I think that can lead to a lot of negative things. It can be great for a while, and you can get a lot of stuff done, you can make some really cool stuff, and then I think, yeah, I think you can burn out, and I think there's times you need to disconnect, there's times you just need to switch off, and I think there's times you need to let yourself off the hook and go, you know what, it's okay if you get nothing done today, that's okay.
yeah,
I think we need to be kind to ourselves sometimes in that regard, and I don't think society's great at that generally. We're often pushed, productive, get this done, get that done, do this before you're 30, do this before you're 40, do this before you're 50. And
right.
and there's times you just need to be able to take your foot off the gas and allow yourself to chill out and be okay with that. I think that's part of the balance.
And I don't want to be cliche, but it's important. I want to say it. It really speaks to your moniker, something that you said
Right.
that you necessarily would not have taken on your
Yeah.
own by choosing. But I really feel that my thoughts whenever I thought of that name was nobody could fit that name better than you, in my opinion,
Ah, thank you, Betty.
because
Thank
it
you.
really you speak from the heart and it's true. Everything you're saying, and if you remember, I really became known in the synthwave scene from my videos before I was doing the music.
Totally. I
So
mean, and they were great. I mean, they were so inspiring and positive. Your
thank you,
energy, your heart shines. It does, and that's a kindness to people. That's a gift to people. Your videos were a gift, and
thank you.
and 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 I think that's probably how we connected was through from seeing your videos. And I really appreciated them. But even then, like there's times that would have been hard for you to keep up, and times
Yeah,
where it's got to be okay not to keep it up, or just to go, do you know
yeah,
what? I don't feel this way today, and that maybe that's okay.
yeah. That's literally why I was saying it, because the pandemic, as we said,
Mm,
I hate bringing it up because you think of it being like such a catastrophic life point, because it changed everything. It changed how people are,
totally.
and that really changed my perspective of why I made those videos. And a big part of it was exactly what you just said: is, do I feel like I'm being me for real? Am I being genuine? Am I doing this video for compliance, or am I doing this because I'm trying to help others as well as myself? Because
Sure.
I still do them on occasion, but I do them more on TikTok now.
Mhm.
But again, I'm not consistent with them because some days you just don't feel it. But I've
Yeah.
also been very vocal about stating that, in the sense of, if I'm not going to be giving you a message that's coming from my heart, like, and I'm just telling you to tell you,
Mhm.
I'm not going to tell you,
Yeah.
because it's not real.
That's
So,
it.
I think that the biggest moment of clarity was just telling people that if you can't take care of yourself, you can't be expected to take care of others.
Yeah.
And we live in a world of, having responsibility and having that mindset of being productive, like you said,
Mhm.
doing, 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 doing. And the last person that gets affected is not you, it's somebody else, because you're not putting yourself first.
That's it.
So, mental health is one of the biggest challenges that we all face.
Yeah.
And, despite those videos that I did for so many years, I'm not perfect. And I
Mhm.
always was transparent about, they were self-medication for me. And
Sure.
if I can share value, then great, because I found ways to pull myself out of these deep depressions. And
Mhm.
it's real. And the problem is, people are afraid to talk about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, as artists, I feel that we struggle because we always want to do better. We
Yeah.
always want to find our place in the world. And some take longer than others, as we know.
Yeah.
And, it's just it's a balancing act, you
It
know.
is.
But you really nailed it with just like that mindset of, sometimes you don't have to do that all the time.
That's it.
Sometimes you got to take a break, but
Yeah.
make it a healthy break. Don't
Yeah.
don't disconnect from the world and shut down,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's going to put you in a worse place.
Yeah.
And just remember that you have support. There
Yes.
is there is always someone out there that
That's
cares
it.
about you. And
Yeah.
I
For
can't
sure.
stress that enough. And the synthwave scene really is the true testament to that, because I feel that there's moments when we sit there and we really feel nobody cares. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it's in our vicinity. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
the internet is such a big place. I
It
mean,
really is. Like totally. And that would again, going back to the pandemic, which we don't necessarily want to dwell too much on, but one of the things, like my whole life changed in the pandemic, and not for the better, necessarily. I kind of went into the pandemic with my own studio, happily married, couple of kids. I came out of the pandemic, without my studio, my, without my relationship, very, very different life. But I do think about the things I'm grateful for in that time. And one of them, funnily enough, was Animal Crossing. And that's where, like, James White, Signal Noise, and we played Animal Crossing along with a friend. He goes by the name Jam Factory, Gavin Strange, who works for Ardman. And like, we would play Animal Crossing every day together, and that's how we kind of really communicated. We'd known each other on Twitter, but like, we would connect every day in Animal Crossing and visit each other's islands and trade
Right.
furniture and stuff. And it
That's
was
awesome.
so nice. It was so sweet. It was like that kind of thing got us through the pandemic. And those were online people I had never met. I had never seen them in for real. Um, but we became genuine friends through that, and we're good. We were like a support group for each other. We really were. We were kind of. It was a very kind of. It was like a safe space. We could talk about what was upsetting us or what was bothering us, and the other guys would be there for each other. It's really nice. It's so there's people out there. Yeah, as you say, it's not just the people that you have close by you, necessarily, but look beyond that, and online. I mean, online friends are genuine friends. That's the thing. It's like, it's not. It's there's
You're a perfect
differences for sure.
example.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Perfect example. And yes, it can be a different thing, but it's of no less value. Those, you have real friendships and real connections and deep connections, and there's people out there who support you. That's the thing that's important.
Yeah. So, we're obviously sharing that knowledge to the world because, for anybody that watches the show knows that, I try to be as positive as I can, but I'm a normal human being like everybody else. I go through the same struggles and sometimes different ones, but I care too. And, it's nice when you can give somebody something that uplifts them,
Yeah.
and getting it returned is just as great. So I'm
Yeah.
a firm believer in just supporting each other. That's really what it comes down to. And that scene is underrated for the
Yeah.
amount of support that everybody gave each other for so long, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I'll say, like, a community that I'm pretty active in now is the indie horror community for
Okay.
indie games,
Hmm.
because I've been doing some of my other creative stuff there and including some voice acting and stuff. So I'm seeing a little bit of that again, where there's
Hmm.
just a resurgence of care and people
Yeah.
that are finding these safe spaces to connect with each other and relate to what keeps them in a better place. And a
Yeah.
lot of them are survival horror and any type of horror inspired game or movie.
Right.
And there's so many indie developers in the world, and indie video game is no different than anything else. But to
Sure.
see that they're very engaging with the audience, which you
Hmm.
don't see often.
Yeah.
I saw that with the synthwave scene. You have the artists talking to the fans.
Yep.
Like, we don't see
Absolutely.
that in many other avenues. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. It
So
was
it's
very open, very, very open communication. And, there are, still fans who are as big in the scene as the artists,
oh yeah,
I mean, we know a few, who's just faces you would see everywhere, and they're fans, but they're on the same level as everyone else,
yep. Good old Neon Fox. I mean, I'm
Of
sure
course.
that's you know he's a legend in his own right, and
Yeah.
many others in the scene.
Yeah.
For they were such a motivational point for everybody too. I think
That's
because
it.
they just show people that, like, there are fans that care that much and
Yeah.
they're not crazy. Like, that's the
That's it.
important part. Because you think about some really dedicated fans in just any creative space, and some
Hmm.
of them could be fanatical in
Hmm.
an unhealthy way.
Oh yeah.
Like, a lot of these supporters, they find ways to help by having
That's
their own
it.
podcasts and radio shows, and they're just pouring their heart out to help
That's it.
other
And they
artists
become part
grow.
of the family, and
That's it.
yeah, real beacons of positivity, you know.
Absolutely.
And can help by being essentially curators. I mean, they can
For
introduce you
sure.
to different artists you haven't heard of. They go doing the digging and do the hard work
Yeah.
of finding all this cool stuff and then sharing it with others, and that's beautiful.
Oh man. I know we could do this all day, and
Yeah.
I know we both have a busy schedule ahead of us. But I guess one last question for you:
Mhm.
in the world of pixel art, is there something that if you get back into that in any way that you'd like to explore, whether it be doing a new form of animation, maybe working with an artist or another creative that maybe you
Mm.
haven't? Is that something that you've thought about doing, like maybe approaching it in a different way?
Yeah,
Because I
do you know
mean,
that
pixel art's so expansive, like you could do so much with it, and
you
you've done a
can?
lot with it already, you know. So
Yeah,
just curious.
I mean, I have, and it is funny because I think it's a weird thing that part of the reason I think I struggled to kind of find my way back into it was that I actually achieved a lot of what I wanted to achieve with it. Like
Right,
I did get to make so much cool stuff.
you
And
really
I
did.
think so there's that on one hand in that I didn't find myself with a lot of unachieved goals, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Um, the other thing is there's so many great pixel artists there now. I mean, when I was starting to do it, there really wasn't. There were a few, there were
Right,
definitely some people like the e-boy guys, who kept it going even when pixel art was nothing. Everyone had forgotten about pixel art and they kept it going. They're amazing. And there were a few others, but not many. Really
right,
not many. Now I kind of look around and go, wow, these pixel artists are amazing. There's so many great pixel artists right now, and it's actually really great. It's kind of really fantastic to see what people are doing with that art form. Um, it's funny for myself. I feel like what I would love to do is actually go right back to basics and start small again and almost kind of rebuild from small, low res cyberpunk images and just get right back to my basics where really probably around the point where I hit around 2013, 2014, where I really started to find my style at that point. There's a part of me would love to go back to that and then see kind of go in a different direction, go right back to the basics and almost go, if I was doing this from zero, like I knew nothing,
right.
what would I build to now? And so I do feel I'd love to get back to really low res, really basic stuff. I went very fancy. Over the years I kind of got more and more ambitious and bigger and more detailed and sometimes more realistic. And I feel like I've done that.
Okay.
But I love the real simple, chunky stuff. And so I feel like that's where I'd go back to right now. If I can, if I
Almost like concept art, if you think about it.
That's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. And almost, yeah, stripping things down to the basics. It's like it takes a lot of skill to do very detailed stuff. And like I said, there's a lot of great artists out there, but there's something very satisfying. One of the things I love, I guess, about pixel art is that challenge of like you might have just one part of a picture, if like even I'm looking at the background here and there's like a little fire hydrant. There's only a certain number of pixels that 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 it can fit into. And so sometimes the challenge is, okay, I've got like whatever 6 by 8 pixels. How the hell do I make this look like a fire hydrant? Like that's literally they're the
Right.
only pixels I've got. And there's almost a puzzle in that. And sometimes the lower res you go, the harder that puzzle is to
The
solve. How
less, yeah, the less
you
you're able to work with
That's
resource
it. You
wise.
have very little to work with, so you've only got a few pixels to make it look like the thing that you've got. I love that. I
Right.
love that, and I love when people achieve it. And so it is funny. Even my own higher res, fancier work versus some of the lower res stuff, or even when I see artists now, sometimes it's the really low res work that I look at and really admire because that took really very deliberate choices, very some really hard decisions in order to get the clarity. And it's a little bit of a puzzle. So yeah, I feel like what I'd love to do is just get right back to basics and almost relearn it to see what would happen.
Like a reboot
Like a
2.0.
reboot, exactly. Yeah, complete reboot. That's it. Throw out a lot of the stuff that I learned over the years and just go right back to the beginning.
I'm all for it, and I look forward to the day that you're inspired to do that again. But
Thank you.
again, you do it at your best, and you do it when it's good for you. Don't do
Thank
it for anybody else. You do it for yourself, right?
you. Exactly. That's it. That's it.
But you can think about me in the process too, because
I will.
I can't wait.
I
but
will.
listen, absolute honor. I mean, I could do this all day, and I'm glad that we get to talk offline more. So I will
Yeah,
let you go. I appreciate your time again, and it's great that we could talk about such a variety of things that affected us both and would help bring us
yeah.
together.
That's
And
it.
I'm
And we have a lot of
grateful for
shared
your friendship.
passions. A lot of shared passions, and it's always great to chat, Benny. Always good.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate your friendship over the years, and thank
Same.
you again. But everybody,
Thank
we
you.
hope you enjoyed the show, and hope everybody stays safe, and remember to take care and have fun.